lot of people making a lot of money out of prohibition and the war on drugs, and it's going to be hard to change it. But at least Nimbin kind of flies the flag, insists on not compromising, insists on hanging in for the truth, knowing it will emerge finally. But to think 3 people have died here in the last month, you know, and I reckon that's quite a lot to do with getting rid of the lane boy culture. Who would watch all that, who would keep shit drugs at bay. There's no doubt, you know, needles have been in this park heaps lately. There were never needles here the last 10 years, you know. They were all gone. Now we're finding shit everywhere.
As a 33-year police professional who spent, 20 of those years at the coalface as an operational police officer, who started off with a pretty hard attitude towards drugs. You play the game, you take the knocks, but very early on you start to realise that some of the impacts of ordinary law enforcement responses to the problems of drug use are pretty clumsy. It's a pretty blunt instrument, and that we often create more harm than good.
And they put a secret camera in that palm tree there and recorded for 4 or 5 months, and it's actually really disappointing that no one challenged them in court, I think, and the whole lot, they followed barristers' advice and everyone pleaded guilty to some vague charge of knowingly being involved in cannabis supply. But the other thing that really mucked up, I thought, is the magistrates quoting, oh, well, here's, you were seen 17 times in the lane. This was the youth club. Our youth club really died about 15 years ago, so this was the youth club. The young guys all hung in this lane. It was like a corner store. This was where they hung out. A couple of them might be selling pot, but a dozen of them weren't selling pot. They were just here. It was part of the culture. So just because they were seen on camera down here doesn't mean they were selling pot. But when they read it out in court, it sounds like, yeah, he's there all the time selling pot. Maybe they were just visiting mates. This was certainly the famous table where everyone would hang out under the fig tree and people would just pull in here and score and leave again, and, the table's been gone. But this was like the youth club. It was the informal youth club. So I found the whole lack of understanding of local culture really limited in court. And the fact they sent up a Sydney magistrate who never knew anything about Nimbin and kept telling everyone in court, oh, Nimbin needs to grow up. Bloody hell, the laws need to grow up, I reckon.
I can remember when all those boys were like 8 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old, and I used to babysit them, and they were really good kids. Really good kids with a lot of heart. They've always been really protective of even their mothers and sisters and brothers. They're just regular kids who basically grew up in a town where their parents were hippies, their parents were alternative lifestyle. That's what they did, and they were basically a part of that. And then they'd all hang out in the lane, you know what I mean? They didn't mean to do it. It was just that it's the only friggin' lane in town apart from the pub one. So where kids gonna hang out, down the pub or in the lane across the road? In the lane across the road.
So I came to Nimbin about 30 years ago, and really it was a dirt road to the Gold Coast then. It was quite different. There was an odd tourist here, not much. You could always score pot, and mostly it was heroin addicts selling pot in those days to finance their habit. And then the hippie kids, the hippies, we wanted to share pot. We just, it's a sacred plant, you share it, you don't sell it. That was kind of the hippie idealism I grew up with. So the young hippie boys grew up here really poor. No one ever had new clothes. Everyone's out of the op shop. It was pretty poor. And I think they slowly woke up to say, Dad's pot in the backyard. I can sell that. So this culture evolved of the young people who grew up here who have a huge understanding of cannabis and understand it as a medicine and understand the law is incorrect. The law is the crime, really. They're well educated on drugs generally in Nimbin, most people I find. They understand that prohibition only came in like 80 years ago. Cannabis has got a huge history, perhaps the most grown plant on the planet 200 years ago. They get it. So they don't feel bad, I think, about helping people access cannabis, a lot of people in this town, we really know the law is wrong. It's wrong, no question about it for me. The lane boy culture really grew over a long time, you know, and the kids who dropped out of school early, or the kids who single parents who are more troubled or whatever, they would come here, they would get help here. The social workers in town always knew where to find people. I would say the social workers in town sent people here to score pot for years and years and years, because even doctors are sending people to Nimbin now. Doctors, all sorts of people, professionals are sending people to Nimbin saying, listen, it's last resort, you should try cannabis now. And every time there's a news story, and there's been a lot the last 2 years, a lot of television news stories, you know, oh, the government's, you know, changed the law, cannabis is now legal, you can get it through your doctor. That comes across like that. They want to score votes. Everyone's going to vote for them if they do it. But then the reality is, you know, your doctor has to go to a specialist. There's massive forms. You have to be terminal. There's state forms and federal forms, and really only a handful of people have actually got to the legal cannabis. You know, the Health Minister Hunt's got stashed in his locker in Canberra. You know, there's very few people got to it. So every time it's on the news, we get 50 phone calls here. And I've got to tell people, no, you know, sure, it sounds legal, but you ask your doctor. They ask their doctor. Doctors don't want to know about it. You've got to go to the black market to score it, guys. I'm really sorry. And a really important point is medicinal cannabis, or to use it as a medicine, you want organic outdoor cannabis. You don't want hydroponically grown in a bath of chemicals indoor cannabis. And maybe 80% of Australia's cannabis, or 90%, is grown indoors. But in Nimbin, you can always buy bush, organic, outdoor pot. That's a huge plus for Nimbin as a medical cannabis supplier. And that's why a lot of people came here, because it's very hard to buy bush pot anywhere else. In the city, it's pretty much all organised crime, hydro, grown in chemicals, no responsibility about the end product. And it's quite different. You know, skunk pot that's been bred for 30 years, the CBD's bred right down, the THC's way up, total space case pot. You know, here you'll get more sativa pot, you'll have a more balanced product, much better medicine. A really important point I think people don't understand. So this is a letter that I got this week from a woman really upset about some of the lane boys going to jail, because she says they literally saved her life. And I think there would be thousands of people possibly like this who have been coming here regularly to get their medicine, because you can argue forever about, you know, what's recreational, medicinal. For me it's a medicinal herb, and even, you know, young kids smoking bongs after school, they're doing it to relax, they're doing it to let go, they're doing it because of the medicinal properties in the plant. So this is a typical letter, and there could be thousands of these. She discovered pot through buying it here, because you can't get it anywhere legally. So the big disappointment I think for the Nimbin community on the lane boys getting locked up is that the whole, you know, the Western world is certainly moving on with its understanding of medical cannabis, that it is good, that it is really safe, that it is extraordinary, and I guess in Nimbin we expected that, you know, the general population would come along with that, and they've got such a hang-up about people selling pot, dealing pot, whereas in fact you got to get it from somewhere. So all these, you know, politicians and journos and whatever who go to a party and there's someone smoking pot, where did they get it from? All the sick people, where do they get it from? They all get it from the black market now. The whole culture of the lane boys, if we just put it all in the lane boys bracket, just because it was people trading in Rainbow Lane, and they weren't necessarily boys at all. In fact, they'd make sure young people didn't do it, go back to school. You know, they were the local policing and minders of that underground shadow culture, because it's all the black market. You know, no one can go to the cops. You can't report people who rob you or rip you off or beat you up or whatever. So you've got to trust each other within that culture. It makes for very strong bonds. It's made Nimbin a really strong community. Like, like we're outsiders pitched together. Culturally, it's super strong. People will take you in, you know. If I'm homeless on the street tomorrow, there's a dozen people will give me a bed, and vice versa. There's a lot of that in Nimbin. There's a lot of people sharing. People share cannabis. It might be worth lots of money out there, but it isn't to us hippie culture. You know, it's a medicine we share. It's like a sacred thing. We got dealt some kind of backhand blow by the court system because all the barristers gave the guys advice: if you plead guilty, you'll get a suspended sentence, no one will go to jail, fair cop. But in fact, probably 10 or a dozen of them are going to get jail sentences, which isn't at all what we were led to believe or expected. So how much barristers and lawyers can organise what's going to happen in court and can't, I never know. I used to think they had more say, but when I watched this I thought, wow, we're just at the mercy of bigger powers, because I suspect the police were just laughing into their beers that night. You know, no one expected suddenly a strange Sydney magistrate to turn up who was hardcore, and bang, first boy into jail, people were in tears. Then one after another through the day, people kept getting locked up. So it was quite a shock, I think, especially when everyone had been kind of told you'll get suspended sentences. I don't understand how they can be so certain about that, barristers. They were wrong.
Zach, you know, he's my best friend, and it just really hurts me that he's in jail, you know, and he didn't do anything wrong. He would do anything for anyone. He would chop wood for old women who didn't have money. He would go around and cut down a tree for you.
I've seen the Lane boys here give away pounds of marijuana to people who had no money and needed it, especially mothers with children with epilepsy or brain tumours or young Josh. I remember his mum coming here because she'd heard he's a young boy with a brain tumour, given a few months to live. She heard about Nimbin, she heard about cannabis maybe helping. She came here, all the boys that were here, it wasn't just boys, all the people who were here chipped in and gave her a pound of weed. A pound of weed's like $3,000 or $4,000. Gave it to her. She broke down crying in the lane. So, you know, it's easy to judge everyone and blah blah, but in fact we're talking a community with a big heart and a big understanding of what cannabis can do for you and its medicinal properties.
They were doing, you know, good things. They were, you know, building houses and being a part of the community, helping people build their houses, helping people slash their paddocks, and, you know, things that you need your neighbours to do, the boys would do.
What they used to provide was cannabis, which is, you know, Mother Nature's herb, for people who were sick, and they were very non-discriminatory about who they provided it to, and it was for lots of reasons. So a lot of people made medicine out of it. Their generosity has certainly helped a lot of people all around Australia for the use of cannabis as a medicine, as to make them better and to help them heal.
The police were very rough with the boys. The boys were unarmed and not resisting. I think that it's had a bad effect on the community in general because they were honourable. If you bought something off them, you got what you expected. They were careful. They kept ice out of the community, which is very important. I think since they've been busted and they've been taken off the streets and actually banned from the community by the police, which I think's outrageous. I feel that, and I have heard that there are some good people still on the streets. However, there are people who are less than honourable and selling bad stuff and not giving good deals, and this gets the community a bad reputation. We feel as though marijuana should be legalised, so we're proud to sell it, we're proud to have it on the street, but it must be good deals, genuine people who care, and this is what we had before. And I think the fact that they've gone to jail is appalling, given that America, who we originally signed up with many, many years ago, I think it's 26 states now there that have either decriminalised medicinally and or recreationally, and here we are still at this stage clamping down on people, and certainly the wrong sort of people, I believe.
just on the street, it's terrible. Now you've got like people from Sydney and places, you know, they've just come in and they are getting on the ice and doing stuff that the boys used to basically deal with it. They would say, look, you can't do that, you know, get it out of town.
What I've noticed about the Laneway boys going is that they were a kind of a security in this town, and I guess when people came from out of town to do business on the cannabis trade, if they were unscrupulous or if they weren't connected in some way, they were definitely dealt with, and that was with all drugs. So we had a small ice problem in this town. We've always had a heroin issue because we have a methadone clinic here, and but since the Lane boys have gone, I've just noticed a whole lot of new people who've moved into the area. We've probably had a half a dozen deaths in the last year, which are fairly unaccounted for by police. They won't really tell anybody how people died, but for most of our inside knowledge, it seems like they're heroin overdoses. And which is really sad, because overdosing just shouldn't be happening in our community anymore at all. So what's happened is that they've left a large gap for other people to come into this community and pretty much do whatever they want. And I guess we used to look at them a lot as security. They in fact used to work for us as security when we had community gigs. Some of the boys would come and work as security.
When I first arrived here, this town was quite safe. It was a beautiful place. They looked after it. They were gentlemen. They would carry your groceries to the car. They would also make sure you got the best deal. They'd send you to the right places. And we never saw sleazy, bad characters really on the street or at night. My children, when I arrived here, were 15 and 18. I'd let them on the street at night. 2 years later, I wouldn't let my children come out after 7 o'clock at night anymore. It's unsafe. We have a lot of crime. We have a lot of deaths. We have a lot of overdoses. If you walk on the streets at night, you can see it. You can see that it's a bit dangerous out there now. We have people we've never seen in this town before on the streets. We're really feeling a big impact from the Lane boys gone. They did more than just sell drugs to this town. They created a life for this town. They helped this town.
It's made no difference, except we've got supply all over the village now, and all sorts of strangers selling all sorts of drugs. So what happened here is when locals were doing it, they managed to keep some kind of quality control. People didn't get ripped off, people didn't sell shitty drugs, people didn't buy a bag of parsley thinking it was cannabis, which happened quite a bit. There's a lot of money in it. So it's tempting for people to lie and steal and cheat. So to actually get on top of that and put some order in the whole market was quite an effort, I thought, by Nimbin. And there's no respect given for that. And I understand the law can't see that, but you'd like to think intelligence would come into play. And with medical cannabis, you know, supposedly legal now, through a doctor and a specialist, and a nightmare to access it, you'd think other people accessing it would be given some sympathy, some discernment, some leniency. But they don't seem to have seen that.
Now we've got police trying to still enforce laws that just aren't popular with the public. This is culturally and society have accepted cannabis use, especially in Australia. It's in mainstream media all the time now, more and more. You know, a lot of our TV and TV content comes from the US, from states and other countries where cannabis use is so much normalised. It's just decriminalised. It's not an issue anymore. It's you know, in some of those places, you know, it's taxed and regulated and taxed, and budgets are looking really good. Health, you know, where medical cannabis is available in other countries and states, you know, the health budgets are doing well, and other aspects of the GDP of the states are doing well. I think the boys worked out that, you know, you need to have your supply organised. You know, no good buying cannabis from outside all the time. They just got real about it, and they worked out to, you know, provide a good service with a smile. Older folk used to get very good deals for medical cannabis. They were legendary for that. Their generosity towards others in the community was very good. They looked after themselves and others, and, you know, in essence, you know, they did a good, working to a pretty good business model. So yeah, when police after years of watching these kids grow up, it's like, it's beyond shooting fish in a barrel. You know, these guys were farmed. That's just what happened. But the community did benefit from that in a lot of ways, as well as financially. You had, you know, 2-3 dozen kids, you know, young folk, young men of the village raising families and, you know, spending a lot of that money in town. That's all gone. You know, it's kind of tragic, but, you know, it's also, you know, these unintended consequences. Well, are they unintended? But the consequences of prohibition.
We've got a 50-year industry grown up illegally in Australia, with thousands of people learned how to breed plants, learn how to make good medicine, supplying medicine, sometimes free, sometimes non-profit, sometimes profitably. Do they really think that they can just license all the big companies and totally bust all these people? I mean, I find that hard to believe. Hard to believe they won't use the local knowledge, and they won't create what we call hemployment. You know, there's 100,000 jobs out there that worked out, conservatively 100,000 jobs out there waiting to happen. People growing, packaging, selling cannabis in a regulated, quality controlled, taxed way. Over a year ago now, when they've been busted, they were all banned from talking to each other and banned from the village. So a lot of them went out and got jobs, had children, created businesses, started a new life, and really a lot of them did. And we're starting to think, you know, well, the coppers have done pretty well, you know. This is great for these guys. Get out into the real world, get a job. They're all pretty skilled and talented and capable. And now, a year later, to suddenly say, right, go to jail, even if you've had young children, even if you've got a job, all right, go to jail now, it's just dumb for me. You know, they achieved what they wanted, getting people to live a new life, so why interrupt it and mess it now?
It's just sad. It's just made a really big hole in the community, and I know a lot of people really miss having the boys around because they made such a difference to town.
You could ask anyone in this town, oh, I want to buy some cannabis, where do I go? Oh, they'd send you here. They'll send you into this backyard or into this area. And it was an accepted, a kind of an accepted part of what had to happen, because of course people have got to buy their medicine. Where are they going to get it? You know, and the courts don't seem to even consider that. Where do you get it from? You know, people have been going to the black market for decades to take their pain away or stop their epileptic seizures or help their children. Or
I came to Nimbin to use medicinal cannabis for chronic pain. When I first came here, I met the Laneway boys, who were fantastic with information, with help. They would run across the road, help me with shopping, things like that. It's really sad to see that they've been taken away from us. I feel that that little bit of support's gone from the community, definitely.
They're kind of trapped, the cops, but I see no reason why they can't actually make a noise about, you know, we want to separate cannabis, medical cannabis is valid, give us some discretion, you know. If this village had open medical cannabis available, there would be so much less other drug abuse, as everywhere else, as we're seeing in America now. You know, people here have got off their heroin habits using cannabis, got off their ice habits. Hemp Embassy, I know a lot of people who are old ice addicts now smoking cannabis. What would you rather have? Give them a break. You can't kind of get that the police won't make some effort to separate cannabis from other drugs, because it's totally different. You know, it's a dried herb. Everything else is processed or chemical. Everything. It's the one dried herb. Quite different. And yet for the coppers who came here this morning, finding ice or finding heroin or finding pot is all the same. It's all just illegal to us, Michael. Sorry, mate. Bang. So I was really lucky they didn't bust me smoking a joint here this morning, because that's how easily it happens. It's happened to me twice here before. I mean, this is serious medicine. How can anyone want to stop that happening? So I don't think any of us realise what a good medicine it is and how diverse it is and how it can help across the spectrum, so many people, so many things, just because you relax. Maybe you relax and let your body heal itself, maybe that's part of it. the anti-inflammatory properties, and most pain is inflammation, swelling. That, it's simple, and no wonder it was in so many medicines 100 years ago, and no wonder they want it illegal. That's what I've realised now. It's they're going to lose a fortune. It was the kind of good for nearly everything remedy and immune booster and everything for so long. Some report came out a few years ago where Nimbin was the third most visited place in New South Wales for tourists. So that's part of it, and the North Coast certainly has got popular. So there's been this real effort to clean up Nimbin the last few years. Real estate's doubled. We've got 9 permanent police. We had a sergeant who'd spent a long time here previously. He knew Nimbin well. He got moved back to Lismore. We've got a new gung-ho sergeant, her job to clean up town. We had a really friendly inspector. She got moved back to Lismore. Like, there's a clear... I think, we just stand out like massive dog's balls, like Nimbin. It doesn't really have big crime figures at all. Like, the drug busts are clearly going to be huge. This has been like a mecca for cannabis users for 40, 50 years. So we're starting to stand out like a torchlight. So people are going to bust us. They're going to focus on it. I don't know where that's going to go. People aren't going to stop smoking pot. You have to grow your own pot. You can't afford it. So, growing your own pot's going to be the critical bottom line. For me, I ain't going to die happy unless people are allowed to grow their own medicine. That's what it's all about for me. Take the money out of it. And let's grow it so you can juice raw leaves. That will be phenomenal healing. I just know this is going to happen. It'll be huge. So the plant itself will show itself, will do the change, because it's just so efficacious, I reckon. So hopefully they will appeal a lot of these cases and not go to jail and get some reasonable hearing. But the whole ignorance about cannabis use. I went to court again yesterday for more Lane Boys, and the magistrate woman was quite nice, but she doesn't understand cannabis culture. She doesn't get it. They're not gonna really accept that we made a mistake. It's going to be really hard for the cops, especially, I think, to swallow that we've been ruining people's lives, not helping them. We've been trashing people's lives, busting up families, destroying children's relationships with their parents, destroying parents' relationships with each other. The whole drug war should be off the table, Drug use is a personal pain-relieving effort. It's all it is. People trying to have less pain, people trying to feel good, people trying to enjoy their day. It should be all a health issue. Nothing to do with a criminal thing. It's obvious to me. It's so obvious. There's so much nasty stuff come out of this war on drugs and prohibition, of splitting people against each other. The police are constantly asking in Nimbin, ring us up, dob people in, dob in a dealer, dob someone in, mate. It's completely un-Australian. And it hasn't helped the police much, their attitude. And in fact, in this town, they're really unpopular, and very few people will give them information, which is sad. Because I think most cops join the force for a good reason. They want to do good. And then are they blindly believing this stuff? No. Heaps of cops now apologise. We get phone calls every day in the embassy, the police have busted me. They were really apologetic, saying, we'd rather be busting ice, but we have to do our job, or I'll lose mine and the mortgage, I'll lose my wife, I'll lose my house. They're trapped. So I feel for the cops, but the senior cops making the laws, always stopping politicians from changing the laws, they ought to be hanging their heads in shame. Total shame. Educate yourself.